Okay, it looks like we're live. Clive will be coming on in about 10 minutes, maybe a little earlier. If you're watching this recorded, skip about 10 minutes forward. That's when we really start covering the main topic. Well, we can talk a lot about everything, but the main topic that I chose for tonight London time, is the fiat currencies, all the major fiat currencies. They're on the precipice of a big fall, and they have been falling, of course, for many decades. And we're going to look at a scorecard for all the major fiat currencies going back to the year 2000. I think I've got about 15 or 16 of them, and you'll be surprised which ones are at the top in terms of performing better versus gold. But I see that a lot of you are here already. Silver Task, thank you for being a moderator. Indy is here. Paul Veens is here. Hannah is here. Rick and Fed is here. Says it's showtime. And Durarama says hello, Mario, Clive, and Rudy. Yeah, Rudy just showed up. He was in the other room, and I think he had a feeling the live stream was starting. Gene W, hello, Mario from everywhere. Farm Dog says, will silver ever get past $26? Uh, I think so. Yeah, I think the dollar will drop below 126. That's how I look at it. It's not, yeah, it's the dollar and the other fiat currencies coming off. Thomas from Germany, Silver Drill Pickle uh, says, always love Mario and Clive shows. Jillian B says, hello, hi, Mario and Rudy. DD Prepper, thank you guys for sharing your knowledge and expertise. Andrew Bevan from South Wales, waking up fast, says good evening, Mario and Clive. Yeah, Clive should be here soon. Guten Abend, Quadman 72. Nice to see you here. Aaron Ritchie from Texas. Tyler Pelletier from from Niagara Falls area in Ontario, Canada. Dutch Libertarian. Anthony Gabello, Mario the Legend King. I'm not a king, but anyway. David Moore, Orange Pill. Bitcoin is 66,200. Rick says, hi, Mario. Denny Younghead, let's go for it. Mr. M, is hyperinflation just around the corner in Australia? Well, I'm not in Australia, but I think it will. It's going to be everywhere, the currency collapse. Even JSnip4 had a dream that one orange would cost $10, and I think that will be cheap. Yeah, food prices are moving up quite a bit. I'll tell you about yeah, my wife went out for lunch today. Not the most expensive place, but I'm gonna go over the prices a little bit and compare it to the silver price and the gold price. Sehun says, good evening, Mario Rudy from Bristol. Hannah, my great grandmother was born in Merthyr Tydfil. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that correctly. Rosanna Schomer from Germany. Rich Tugas, bonjour, Mario. Racer X from Alberta. Ray Foot from Edinburgh. That's great. We have people from everywhere. Not Joe King 2, Manchester. Miguel Sanchez says, keep safe, sir. Holy cow from the New Forest. Gianfranco Bergagna. Hi, Gianfranco. Mr. B is a moderator. Thank you for being moderator. Michelle Akasets from Norway. Rob B says J Snip 4 is a clown. I don't know, but it's interesting he had that dream. I don't believe in those things, but I just thought it was interesting. TV week highlights. Greeting from Essex. The real Scott from Glasgow. Jean-Louis Lalonde, Bank of Canada, has zero gold. Yeah, I mean, Canada has a lot of gold in the ground, like in terms of, but that takes time to mine and extract out of the ground. And it's not an excuse not to have gold reserves. I mean, Russia has a lot of gold reserves and has a lot of gold underground. And the Bank of, I almost said Bank of China, Bank of Canada used to have a lot of gold in the 60s. Scott 49 140. When the system is stacked against you, you stack against the system. Yeah. Pablo Pina's here. Oh, Clive is just come on. Let me admit him in onto the live stream. Elvio says boa noite from Portugal or de Portugal. Nice to see someone from Portugal as well here. Clive is coming on. Hi, Clive.
Hello, good evening, Mario. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, no, we can hear you nice and clear. I was just saying hello to everyone. I started a little earlier.
hmm
And yeah,
I,
so
I was on a little bit earlier. I saw a few questions, Mario.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh, good.
can I just fire
Sure.
them at you? And there was somebody who his name was Golden Tag Team from Holland,
Yeah.
and he was asking about Swiss cantons because he wants to move to Switzerland to get out of Europe. And he asked me which cantons have got the most freedom of speech. Well, all of them.
Yeah. Well, the
It's,
best, I think, tax-wise is Zug, isn't it? Zug.
Exactly. Zug is the place to go if you want low taxes, but it's got the highest house prices.
Yeah.
Obviously, one goes with the other. There was another guy, PG Tips, who asked about the £2 Britannia he'd bought. He said he paid £30 and he didn't understand why it was only written £2 on the coin. Well, Mary, do you want to answer that one?
They will just put any number on these coins, the 1 ounce Britannia, gold Britannia, they put 100. They still mint, of course, the sovereigns, and legally, the face value of a sovereign is a pound. So you would think that the 1 ounce gold coin would be £4 28 because that's how many sovereigns you need to get a pound to get an ounce. So it doesn't mean much. There were some coins they minted like that were less than an ounce a few years ago, and they put a 20 pound face value on it. And that's a lot of times that you were able, these guys here in the UK, they're going to petrol stations and paying paying with those coins, even though it was worth less than 20 pounds. And they're supposed to accept it because they're coins of the realm. It had the queen on it. And but that's
There was
interesting.
a guy who went to Tesco's in the UK with one of the British £100 coins,
Yeah.
and they called the police on him. He got arrested, thrown in jail, and then, of course, when they found it was legal tender, they had to apologise to him.
Yeah, they're very ignorant about all that. And talking about the pound and the currency, Clive, today the topic is all fiat currencies are on the edge of the precipice. I mean, I always choose a topic. We can talk about other things, but have to put something on the
hmm
title. And also, we're going to look at a currency scorecard for the 21st century. I think I sent that to you.
Yep, I
You've
saw
gone
that.
through it. I was surprised. One of them that was near the top. I wouldn't have thought so, but we'll come to that later. Just have a few more minutes, one more minute here, and say hello to everyone. We got Deacon asking you a question, Clive. If Clive isn't given the part of Q in the next James Bond film, I'll be disappointed. So he thinks you should be Q.
Well, I'm sure I don't know who Q was, but I'm sure it wasn't a bimbo.
Yeah. Yeah, Des Smith, one sovereign is 20 shillings. That's right. I've got here 6 shillings. So I was telling the viewers that I went out for lunch today, and I took my half sovereign, which right now you can sell for 196 pounds. And I wanted to compare it to the price of the lunch and then translate it into silver. And the price would have been 6 shillings if the price of silver was like 16 to 1. So we'll come to that in a minute, and I'll tell you where the price of silver should be in pounds if the 6 shillings would have matched the gold price of the lunch, which was 106 pounds. And it might sound a lot, but it wasn't the most expensive restaurant. And my wife and I, we had one glass of wine each. We didn't get a bottle, but the Sprite, my wife had a Sprite just to start, and I had a sparkling water. They were like £3.50 each, which is a lot. But anyway, so Clive, I'm gonna read something here that I wrote about why I'm doing this scoreboard or scorecard and looking at currencies. So just bear with me a second. Uh, so while we are distracted with wars, politics, financial bubbles, economic collapse, debt bubbles, sports, Hollywood, royal intrigue, I can think of the Princess of Wales, right? Our currencies are being inflated into worthlessness. Over millennia, gold has been the best store of wealth, the best measure of value, and the best medium of exchange. And some people are going to argue about the medium of exchange part, but let me finish reading this and then we can talk about that. It is why we use it as a measuring stick versus fiat currencies. Fiat currencies are imposed on the public because they are a representation of money or gold. They are imposed on us by the force of the state via legal tender law and requirement to use it to pay taxes. So with all the distractions out there, we deem it important to warn you about the state of the fiat currencies. There's only one way to protect your liquid savings. And I'm not talking about investments here, guys, or Clive, because I try to focus more on currency and savings. And Clive leans more towards the investment part because that's what he did for a living, advise people. So I'll continue here. Your liquid savings from this process of inflation. So there's only one way to protect yourself. Liquid savings means, if you want to call it your money, right? Or your cash. And it is through holding physical gold. And I would add silver as well. Investments are a different story, and we are not here to advise you on it, even though we can give you our opinion on things, especially Clive. Holding gold in our current inflationary system does, however, act similarly to an investment, despite it being simply money. So I'll stop here, Clive, and see what you think about that statement.
Well, look, everybody should keep some money, and the way I prefer to keep my money is in gold and silver. I agree with the principle. It's not really an investment. It's money, and the money you have is not money at all. The paper money, that's not money. So keep some gold and silver as your money is my message to everybody.
Yeah, and some people might argue as well, oh, you can't take the little half sovereign and pay for your lunch and get change, or you can't take your gold, but it's saving right now. I mean, if they allowed us to use anything to make payments, if we didn't have legal tender laws, we would go back. I think people would go back to using gold and silver. But I said as well that it is the best medium of exchange. And that's where people might say, oh, you can't take gold and pay for things. But uh, in 100 years' time, you'll be able to take this half sovereign and still pay for something if someone is willing to accept it. But with paper money, in the short term, it's very good medium of exchange, but over the long term, it just dies unless it has some collector's value to it.
Actually, Mario, one of the comments which is scrolling by I saw was from somebody called Farm Dogs. He said that he took his gold to the grocery store and they wouldn't take it. And obviously, he must be very upset about that. But I just say to Farm Dogs, was he wearing a hoodie?
Yeah.
And if he wasn't, either the grocery store's stuck raving mad, or he needs to go home and go with Plan B, which means to take the gold foil wrapper off his chocolate and eat it.
Yeah, the other thing though, if if you go to the grocery store, how much you're going to spend? I mean, I don't know, 30, 50 pounds or $50. I mean, I'd rather take some silver because
Yeah.
gold, you don't take 10,000 pounds cash or if you take a 50-pound banknote here in the UK and you go buy like chewing gum, they probably say, no, have you got some change, please? So it's the same thing.
Yeah. So even
Uh,
when we were on the gold standard, people were not actually spending their gold coins except for very large purchases. They used the silver coins, which were at the ratio of 15 or 16 to 1 at the time.
Yeah, and I'm reading this book here. I told you about a few weeks ago, the Count of Monte Cristo, which I recommend by Alexandre Dumas, and it talks a lot about the money at the time, and it's interesting that the exchange rates they give the price in francs and livres, and then the author has put the price in pounds. So the exchange rate is like 1 pound is 22 francs, which is exactly what I found out by looking at the coins. But for example, there's a part in the book that I just finished that this guy is given this precious stone that's worth a lot of money, and he sells it to a jeweler for 40,000 francs, and the jeweler pays him in paper banknotes and Louis gold coins, so a mixture. Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. So that's how it worked, and this was written, I think, in the 1830s. So it's not something written recently.
That's a big book, Mary. I'm surprised you're getting through it so quickly. Looks like you're halfway through already.
Yeah, it's a good story. That's why, it's if you put it down once you start. But Clive, so let's I'm gonna share this here. Let's see. We're gonna go through the currency, where is it? Share the currency scorecard for the 21st century. And can you see it?
Yep.
So the way I've done it is, so I read that to you guys. That was me. But one thing that I saw yesterday, Peter Spina. I met him once in Switzerland when I went for a precious metals conference. Nice guy. I think he's of Czech origin, but his I think his father emigrated to Czechoslovakia in 1968. Do you remember? I don't know if you've heard of the Prague Spring when the Soviets invaded, but this is what he said. Gold is the money of trust when trust breaks down among international players. And I think that's really important with what is going on in the world right now. Don't you feel that, Clive?
Oh, exactly. When two countries need to trade with each other, right now they're trading in dollars because they trust the dollar. But if that breaks down, they'll have to turn to something more tangible. And I think gold is the only thing they've got to turn to.
Yeah. So what I've done here, so no surprise here. We're starting from the best currency, the best performance versus gold since the year 2000, so in this century. And this chart here shows you how many grams of gold you can get for 1 Swiss franc. So the Swiss franc, as you can see, even though it's the best performing currency, it has lost 76% versus gold since the year 2000, but it's the top performing currency. And that's why I think it's so important for, and this is just my opinion, I'm not giving advice. I just think it's really important to have a little bit of gold uh, in case you have a lot of money in the bank, or the bank deposits. What's your view, Clive? And you see here, Clive, that despite the Swiss franc being the best performer, it's just dropped to a new low, and I think they're going to have to update these charts here soon.
Yeah. Well, we spend a lot of time looking at the value of the one currency against another. What's the dollar worth in pounds, or the pound worth in dollars, or the Swiss franc in euros? But the reality is, all these currencies are going down together. And the way you can tell that is exactly the charts you're showing, Mario. You can see how much money you used to be able to buy with your pound, your dollar, or euro, and it doesn't matter which currency you pick.
Yeah.
Every single one of them, you can buy only a tiny fraction of the old amount, and the reason you can only buy a tiny fraction of it is because the value of the money's gone down. And it's not just gold, of course. You could look at anything on the planet that is rare and desired, like a house. Why are house prices so high compared with 10 or 20 years ago? It's because the value of the money is going down. Why is it going down? Because the governments have resorted to printing it as if it was sand on the beach to pay off every little crisis, every situation, to ensure re-election, to keep the economy happy, to keep the people happy. And that level of printing has become like a drug. They can't get away from it now. They're so used to spending the money. They've committed themselves to spending the money on all kinds of things, and they can't now suddenly turn around and say, we're not going to spend any more of it.
Yeah, the other thing this tells me about the Swiss franc, because Switzerland doesn't have too many natural resources. So even though the BRICS countries have a lot of national resources, it doesn't mean that their currency is going to be good if they ever have a BRICS currency. Uh, the only reason we've covered it is because uh, a BRICS currency and BRICS countries trading uh, with their own currency, it's going to take demand away from the dollar. But it doesn't mean that their currencies are going to be any good just because they have commodities, because Switzerland is not a commodity country. So let's go to number two, Singapore dollar. And Singapore dollar has lost 83%. And that's another country with very little natural resources. It's a city state, but I think the reason why Singapore has done well is because it's got the institutional, the rule of law, I think is, and property is respected there. I don't think there's much corruption, but even then, it's lost 83%. So that's the second best performing currency. And I haven't looked at every currency, but the major ones. So number three, this is what surprised me. The New Zealand dollar is number three, and it's lost 84%. So there you go. Um, what's number four? Chinese yuan. There you go, 85%. I was surprised. I thought because we are told a lot by the Americans that the Chinese manipulate their currencies, they keep their currency weak, but it's actually been the currency, the fourth least debased currency of the century.
Stronger than the dollar.
Yeah, yeah. And let's go to the next one. Number one, two, three, four. Number five, the Danish krone was at minus 86. So I think the dollar is coming up soon at minus Canadian dollar minus 86 as well. Euro minus 86. And then there's the dollar minus 87%. So we'll continue. After the dollar, we got the Aussie dollar is at minus 87, so it's pretty much matched the dollar, US dollar. We got the Swedish krona at minus 89. And I think here, Clive, the Sweden, the Scandinavian countries are known to be uh, yeah, very big welfare states, and I think that's why their currency is hasn't done as well. What's your view? Any view on Sweden?
Well, it's a great country to go and live in. I mean, I haven't been there for a long time, but it's a great country to live in from the people I know who've been there
Yeah.
because everything is provided for from childcare for the mothers who go to work. I mean, you're well looked after if you fall on hard times,
Yeah,
but the taxes are very high.
yeah, and the currency gets debased quite a bit. Well, here's good old Blighty. or the United Kingdom minus 90%, and it's not surprising. At least we're not at the bottom, but we're not in great shape either. Um, and here's Norway, that's at minus 90. And it's interesting because Norway is supposed to be very oil rich. But what are they doing with all, all that oil? Why do they have to keep printing so much? Is that the other another example of the big welfare bills? It's probably more like Sweden.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. Or Norway obviously had a lot of oil, still has, but the oil's going to run out at some point.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would. I don't mind holding the currency Norwegian krone, but it's not. There's no currency I'd hold for the long term.
Yeah. So here's the yen, not surprising, minus 91. And I think 1 or 2% here makes a big difference, when you compound it, when you realize that it's over 20, almost 25 years. So we're
Well,
getting it.
if you think about it, when you're at that minus 90, going from minus 90 to minus 91 is actually like going from 10 to 9. That's a loss of 10%. It may
Yeah.
look like only 1% on your chart, but it's a lot more than it
Yeah.
shows.
Next one, I did the Indian rupee. That's down 93%. And then we go to Brazil. Even though the Brazilian real has done it's done well in the last 4 or 5 years. It's been pretty steady versus the dollar, but it's still lost 95%. That's
And here's why the BRICS countries won't be able to do anything other than have a gold standard if they want to have
yeah.
a common currency. That's a 500,000 Cruzeiro note.
Oh yeah, that
Uh,
was before the
it's
real.
obviously it's obviously defunct now because
Yeah.
they replaced the currency with a new one. They had a currency
Look,
reset.
yeah, guess who's at the bottom? Russia. So yeah, they would definitely have to have some kind of gold. Russia's down
Mm.
96%. So I'm gonna stop here and see if there's any questions from the viewers. I'm sure there might be. Oh, there's a super chat here. Let's have a look. From Indy. Thank you for your super chat. He says, free Assange, thumbs up, please be safe and pray. No, those are good. That's good advice. Assange, yeah, I'm not sure that I think I think the UK is it the High Court a few weeks ago? Uh, they had a hearing and they're going to decide whether they're going to extradite him. I haven't heard yet. I don't think they've made the decision, but
I don't know.
it's yeah, interesting.
And go on,
Sorry,
Mario.
the interesting thing about that scorecard that I thought is that it doesn't really necessarily having commodities on all the wealth and doesn't really make your currency strong. And also even Japan that doesn't have commodities and has a very productive country, very skilled, educated population. I mean, you would have thought that they do as well as Switzerland, but they've printed and borrowed so much the Japanese. It's almost like they want their currency to be destroyed. The other thing, Clive, that I wanted to say, some people might be asking, when does it get to zero? When do they lose 100%? I think it's when you can't buy any more gold or silver with the currencies, then they're finished. What's your view?
Well, can I show your viewers how fast a currency can go down the tubes? I
Yeah.
used to be many years ago a collector of banknotes. When I'd go to the junk sales and so forth, I'd pick up the odd banknote here and there. I've got literally certainly many hundreds of them, maybe thousands, but they're all defunct. But I want to show. I got a little book the other day to start putting my banknotes in a book, and I found I got a lot of banknotes from one country, and I'd just like to show you them in rapid succession to show you how fast the currency went down the tubes. I won't say which country it is yet. So we start with 10,
Yeah.
then 50, then 100, then 500,000,
Whoa.
then what's that? That's 500,000 too. Then 1 million, then 5 million. This is how fast the currency is going down the tubes. Then
Yeah.
we have 50 million, then we have 500 million, then we
Wow.
have 5 billion,
Wow.
then we have 10 billion. Then we have 50 billion. And lastly, we've got 500 billion. That is how fast the
What
currency was
amount
going
of
down the
time
tubes.
was that?
It was a small number of years. I haven't got
In
the
what country was that, Clive?
and that's Yugoslavia.
Oh, okay. So you were in Yugoslavia before it broke up, yeah?
Well, I wasn't in Yugoslavia, but I collected the banknotes,
Oh,
which
I see.
you find a bit everywhere.
Mm.
So this is prior to the breakup of Yugoslavia, but there's no 1993. It is.
Yeah,
So that's when it.
Marshal Tito, he was the guy
And
in
I'll
charge.
see if I can see the date on the first one, if there is one. 1990. So it's 3 years.
Yeah. Zed Leplin. Thank you for your super chat. He says gold going up $200 in a month from central banks. There's a question here I saw earlier, Clive. Uh, I think is from, is it Youngblood? He said how much money or currency should I keep in the bank? I'll let you answer first. Uh, your opinion. It's
Well,
Danny Youngblood. Yeah. No, sorry,
so
Danny Younghead actually asked it.
so I'm going to put my wealth manager hat on here and say it's not an absolute amount because everything depends on your personal situation. But the answer to this is, first of all, keep some money at home, what you might spend in a week or so, like that, or maybe a month. Then keep in the bank enough money to cover your expenditure for a reasonable period of time, given your situation. You have a steady job; it's a different amount than if you're unemployed or if you're retired. But keep an amount in the bank for normal expenditure over a period of time. Some people would say that's 3 months. Some people would say that's 3 years. It depends on the person. And last but not least, if you have a much larger portfolio, you need to have some sort of asset allocation with some cash in reserve to take advantage of opportunities. So who knows if some asset that you like, let's say your neighbor's house, plummets in price and you have an opportunity to buy it, it's good to have a certain amount of availability at short notice. So what that amount would be depend on the person. I personally think 5% of your wealth in cash or near cash is not a bad idea, even though the returns are terrible and you'll probably lose it in the long run.
Yeah, my view is I guess is slightly different. I try to keep only as much as I need for monthly expenses. Maybe I'll have a bit more. And unfortunately, I have to keep some in the savings for my my taxes as well because I'm self-employed right now. And no one, it's not like I'm employed and I get paid. I'm a PAYE as they call it. Like they here in the UK, if you work for a firm, they pay you net, net of tax. They pay you already, they take the tax out. So that's the reason why I keep. And I think, yeah, keeping cash as well. But the other thing as well, for example, it's really easy if you need the cash to send one of these or go to Gold Investments and he'll put the cash in your account like instantaneously. So gold is also, you can use that as well. But like Clive said, if you're looking to invest and you're comfortable with leaving quite a bit in there as well. Yeah, I don't disagree. But what I'm trying to say here is, let's say you have £100,000 uh, in the bank. I think that's a mistake. I think maybe keep 20. I would keep 20,000 maybe in the savings. The rest I put it in gold and silver. Yeah, I just think that over the last, well, since the year 2000, gold's gone up on average 10% versus the pound every year, versus the dollar is around 9.3. So, yeah, I just think it's a good place to be anyway. And Bitcoin seems people really like it. No, I haven't seen it because I haven't been to Argentina, so I can't tell you, and I haven't read about that. But what I think Argentinians do, unfortunately, is, well, not unfortunately for them, but they like in Brazil, a lot of the people with money and that have savings, they keep it in US dollars under the mattress. Hopefully they're keeping some gold and silver as well. Have you seen this?
Well, I can talk about Venezuela, not Argentina in that respect. A few years ago, I was following a blogger from Venezuela who was blogging in English. But he was a Venezuelan, and he also blogged in Spanish. And after reading their blogs for probably the best part of a year, it was very clear to me it was a very poor family. He was a diver. He used to dive down to inspect the ships which would come into port. But the country was absolutely impoverished. You know, there weren't many cars on the road because they couldn't even get car tires and things like that. And I started asking about the cost of living, and it's very, very cheap there in US dollar terms. But the family obviously was very hard off. So I said to him, look, can you guys take Bitcoin? I've got some Bitcoin I can send you if you want it. And he said, oh yeah, we can take the Bitcoin to an arboreto or something like that. There's a guy who stands under the tree to change money dollars into bolivars or whatever they use in Argentina, in Brazil, in Venezuela.
Venezuela.
And he said that he'll take me to a cafe where there's a guy with a laptop where they have a link to the internet, and they'll change Bitcoin into dollars. So I habitually for a while was sending him a few small amounts of Bitcoin, which they could take and turn into cash. So yes, they did take it down in Venezuela at some point. I presume they still do. And I'm sure Argentina, with the very high inflation rate, has exactly the same thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, Bitcoin can be used to send to anywhere, I guess. I guess the only problem is the volatility um, with Bitcoin. The other thing you can do is you can send. Could you do the what's it called? Uh, I forgot now. You can send.
Western Union, you mean?
Yeah, Western Union. You could send some dollars to them to Venezuela. It will. So that's.
Yeah, I mean that's another way of doing it. It wouldn't be quite the same thing. I think there would
Yeah.
have been a problem because dollars kind of
Yeah.
were
Oh
banned
yeah.
at the time.
But yeah, Bitcoin, like you said, yeah, that's they're probably doing that in Argentina. Uh, Seihan, thoughts on how to get exposure to gold through a UK pension, not as good as physical. Uh, I mean, you can put gold in an ISA, and if you're interested, you can talk to Oliver Temple at Gold Investments. They do that. But you could get exposure through the mining stocks, yeah, in your pension. It's not ideal, but it's one way to do it. Clive? Yeah.
Well, I think that's the way you can buy GDXJ or GDX, the two ETFs which follow the mining sector, one following the mainstream miners, the other following the junior miners.
Mm.
The GDXJ is the junior miners, and it'll give you a leverage play on gold. That means if gold goes up, they should rise faster, and vice versa. Um, I don't really know about the rules as to whether you could buy physical gold in your
Your
pension
SIP.
fund. That's maybe a different problem.
Yeah, you can through a SIP. I'm gonna put here the link to Gold Investments because if people are interested, they can ask Oliver or Simon at Gold Investments. And they actually they store the physical gold in their private vaults, actually. But you have to get Gold Investments and your SIP provider. They have to get in contact. So let me get the Gold Investments link here for you guys if you're interested. The other thing I would say, because pensions, they have limits of like, you can only take some out when you're 55 and then when you're 66 now, I think for male. And then they tax you as well if you take over a certain amount. I would be trying to save personally not in a pension, just buy physical gold and consider that your pension. I know, when I paid into my private pension and the companies that I work for paid into my private pension because I was a higher rate taxpayer, I would get like a 40% kicker on it. But once you take it out, they will tax you as well on it. So I would try to, if possible, take out some money. If you have some money left at the end of the month, and maybe buy, you know, half a sovereign or a sovereign, and keep doing that regularly. What do you think, Clive? And maybe,
It makes sense for everybody to have some money outside of the bank and outside their pension fund. So, excellent way of doing it is to buy your coin every month when you've got it. And if you can't afford the gold coin, you get your silver coins. And if you've got a lot more than that, well, obviously there are some things you can do with property as well, which is outside the banking system, like buying an apartment or a home extension to store your wealth. But I wouldn't store all my wealth in a bank, and I wouldn't store it all in a pension fund if I can avoid it.
yeah. Someone's Cookie Monster says you don't pay, Maneko, you don't pay tax. I can tell. I do. I do pay tax, unfortunately. And yeah, so no, I do pay tax, and it's a lot here in the UK. And then after you pay tax, and you spend your money and you buy something, you pay another 20% on almost everything, which is VAT. So yeah, it's really, I
And then
think it's
you
one
when
of
you drive your car, you're going to pay another tax if you drive
Yeah,
into the
for the
city zone.
petrol, and also when you put fuel in the car, there's duty for fuel. I mean, it's no wonder that our economy is not doing well here in the UK, but it's not the only place that's not doing well. It's just and the problem is, Clive, is that there's so much I think pork or corruption basically going on that and we have a big and I tweeted recently, I said, we don't really have socialism nor capitalism. I think what we have is just a lot of theft. By theft, I mean a lot of inflation, a lot of waste by government, and we end up, not having any money left. Because I think I'm not a socialist, but if our government was honest and the people were honest, yes, socialism will work for those who can't help themselves, and they would be a very few. And capitalism would work a lot better too if, our government didn't help companies that uh, even I see, Clive, that big corporations, they get subsidies to build factories in this country. Why should I pay for Hyundai or some other, I don't know which company, but big multinational to come here and do business. And I think that's the whole problem.
Well, they're just trying to keep the people employed, and I guess if you don't have some sort of manufacturing in the UK, it's going to die out, and the whole country will be unemployed. Then you have a revolution on your hands.
Yeah, but I think the reason we don't have any more manufacturing is because they've inflated the currency so much. People can't save. They tax you so much, so you can't save and invest. So
Well,
yeah,
it's a bit of the
I know
old
what you
British
mean.
joke.
Yeah, I
You remember
know.
that? You go back into the 1960s. You remember the British joke? Everyone was on strike all of the time, and the joke about British Leyland was they say that you open the boot, the night shift falls out.
That shit falls out. That's a good one. I hadn't heard that because yeah, I wasn't here around that time. But um,
On the taxes, Mario,
yeah,
I was we were staying in Broadway last year with my son, and we went to visit a castle somewhere. It was one of these old fallen down castles. Maybe it was a mansion. I don't remember now, but yeah, it was a mansion. And my son said, "Daddy, those windows are bricked up. Why are there bricks where the windows are?" Well, Mario, you may know in England they introduced a
yeah.
certain tax some years ago. They called the
Window
windows
tax.
tax.
Yeah, the window tax.
So people bricked up their windows so they didn't have to pay the tax.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. Uh, Echo's asking, is owning your home with no or little debt a way of having assets outside the system? Uh, I guess if you have a home all paid for, it is outside the system. If you have a little bit of a mortgage, then it is in the system. Wouldn't you say so, Clive?
I'm not worried about having a mortgage. I think having a mortgage is a great thing. It depends on the interest rate you're paying, of course. Here in Switzerland, we have interest rates close to 1%. So I'm not at all unhappy about my interest rate. But of course, in UK, your interest rates are more like 6% or 7% if you've got a new mortgage. And that would be hurting. So I think it depends on what interest rate you pay,
Yeah.
how what the maturity is, and how capable you are of paying it off. But in my case, and I think I speak for a lot of people who think like me, I'd rather have the mortgage and then invest my money in something which is going to produce a greater return than the interest I'm paying on the mortgage.
Yeah, I mean, I had a mortgage years ago, and fortunately, I was fortunate to be able to pay it off. Uh, and I'm happy that I don't have a mortgage because it means, yeah, I don't depend on anyone. Even though we got the our tax council tax statement the other day because they send it around this time of the year because the fiscal year starts in April, and our council tax went up about 5%. And I have to pay also a Greater London tax to Sadiq Khan, the mayor of Greater London, and that was up 8.6%. It's not as much as the main council tax, but I remember last year the Sadiq Khan tax went up 9.9. So the guy is greedy.
Do they put that in the CPI or the retail price index in England, do you think,
No,
Mario?
No, I think that it depends on the council. I think Birmingham and some other councils that went bankrupt, they've increased it by 10%. So my council is not too bad. Um, Tyler Pelletier, thank you for your super chat. He says that Kinesis, Clive pays 10% monthly from users fee transaction fees. So so you're getting 10%. Yeah. I don't like that. It's just a bit, that just sounds a little bit iffy for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too blunt because I don't want to say
Yeah.
there's definitely wrongdoing, but let's just
No.
say I wouldn't go near it with a barge pole
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. Hannah asks, now that climate change is exposed as a sham, can we eat steak again? Well, I'll never stop eating steak. I mean, I'm not sure that everyone has woken up to the climate change thing, but I think more and more people are. I think, oh, yeah, and I think I've got an article here that I wanted to show.
Now, did you on climate change? Did you know that the worst performing sector of the stock market are
Yeah.
the ESG,
Oh, yeah.
the environment funds, the
Yeah.
ones which are clean energy? That sector has really crashed.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up here because I saved a tweet that I reposted or a post that I reposted. And it says, great. And I actually said, this was from when I forgot the March 24th. Is it today? Yeah, it was today, earlier today. I said, great to see people waking up to the climate change scam. US investment funds pull 13.3 billion from BlackRock in anti-ESG campaign. So there you go. It's happening.
Yep.
Uh, and Clive, I back in 2018, I had already started this channel. It wasn't as big. And one of the guys that used to be the head of my desk in the city, he doesn't work. He still works, but for himself in the city. And he works with alternative investments. And he invited me to this small conference, and all they talked about was this ESG, and this was 2018, and I never heard of it. But right off the bat, I thought this is doesn't make any sense. You know, environment, social, and governance. What's that have to do with investment? I could see that it was already, some kind of agenda by these the globalists. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's the way I feel about it.
When I was working in wealth management, we had an entire department dedicated to ESG and environmentally suitable investments. So everything, as I was retiring, everything was being scored for its environmental impact. And I think the law in Switzerland is going to change, if it hasn't changed already, to say that when you propose an investment to the client, You've got to provide information in the fact sheet which tells the client what the environmental impact is. So it is a big thing. But I think most of the clients and most of the bankers, like myself, thought it was a lot of BS. In other
Yeah,
words, we
yeah,
couldn't be bothered with it. And really, if I said to a client, I've got this investment which pays 6%, but they're in the oil industry, or I've got another one paying 2% and they do solar panels. Well, most of the clients are going to say, I'll have the 6%, please.
yeah. And I think this ESG thing is spread into other things. I see vans going around London, they're like plumbers or something, and they're putting signs now, sustainable plumbing and stuff, just to make it seem like they're like following they're saving the environment, which is silly. The other one I wanted to show you and the viewers is this here, because I think it shows one of the reasons why gold especially starting to go up in all currencies. Fed's Powell says he's ready to support job market amid rising unemployment, even if it means higher inflation for Americans. So I thought that was
Yeah,
significant.
he absolutely said that. I heard those words the other day, and I thought, wow,
Yeah,
what he's saying is we're not going to hit our inflation target, so we're going to use Plan B, which is the employment. And I think he's going to use that because although we had tremendously good non-farm payroll numbers, everybody knows that those numbers get revised down almost every single month. And I
yeah.
think if he needs to lower interest rates, he can turn to the other number, which is the what's called the household
Oh
survey,
yeah, that's the
which shows
one.
we've lost about 900,000, nearly 900,000 jobs over 3 months. It
That's
shows that
right.
unemployment's gone up by several hundred thousand people in 3 months.
Yeah,
And, if he wants to have an excuse to lower the interest rates, that's what he's going to use.
yeah. So. Oh, and then here's the other central banker that's saying Bank of England's Andrew Bailey says rate cuts in play, an upbeat take on UK economy. I'm not sure why he's upbeat, but he's also saying that they don't need to get to 2% for them to start cutting, uh, only
Yeah,
that he sees that it's going towards there. So I think they're all moving to cut. And of
yeah.
course, just this national bank cut last week.
Yeah, they're all moving to cut. I mean, the language amongst the central bankers has changed from saying our target is 2%, and now the language is moving sustainably towards 2%. And in the latest missive from Powell, it was the 2% is a target which we will achieve at some point,
Yeah.
but without specifying the length of time it's going to take. So I think they've realised that they may not get to the 2%, and they're moving away from that as the excuse to cut rates. And of course, it is quite essential they cut rates because if you think about it, the commercial real estate
Oh
sector
yeah.
is in deep trouble. The banks are in trouble with the lending to the commercial real estate. People can't afford to take out new mortgages at the rates they are at. And in America, they can't afford to sell the houses because they would lose their low fixed rate and have to take out a higher rate for the new house. So people can't sell houses that they are in. And that if they haven't got a house and want to buy one, they can't afford to buy one. The so you've got the Federal Reserve itself, which is in deep dodo. It's lost about $1.8 trillion due to the fact that it's paying out interest, which is higher than it's earning on its bond portfolio. So their capital and reserves has wiped out. They're insolvent effectively. The government needs lower interest rates because if they stay at these rates, the interest rates are going to spiral out of control and effectively end up a few years from now with the interest exceeding their tax take. So the government wants lower rates. And of course, the incumbent administration is
Mm.
expecting the Fed to do something about it. So the pressure is on from every way you look at it on the Fed to lower their rates. So I think they're going to look for any excuse they can find to lower rates quickly.
Yeah, and here you go. Here we go. Even though I don't like the term inflation to define CPI, but you probably heard of shadow stats. So even Larry Summers, who's like a very mainstream, was Secretary of the Treasury under Clinton and is a Keynesian economist. he's even admitted that inflation is more like 18% in 2022 if you use the previous government's calculation. So this is becoming, this people used to they call people, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, inflation is not that high. But even Larry Summers is admitting, and they even put the chart here. Uh, so according to that, we're still about around 7%, and they're going to cut
Yeah,
rates, Clive.
yeah.
That's
So
going to put a rocket up everything.
the clear-cut message to everybody is if you think saving in money in fiat terms, whether it be in cash, bonds, or money market or deposits, you're walking backwards because not only are the prices of everything which counts going up faster than you're earning interest, but on the interest you're earning, you're paying tax. For at least most people are. So not only are they going backwards before tax, but after tax, they're going backwards much faster. So anyone who's got a way of the courage to save in something other than cash, that's the way to do it. And for many people, the right way to go is real estate. I mean, I do like gold myself, but it's not going to be for everybody. Um, but I think if you could do a home extension or buy yourself a second apartment or something like that, it's another way of saving if you've got enough cash to do it. But I just would not keep it in the bank. It's going backwards faster and faster.
So Slovakia is asking, why do British care about the Fed? I guess he's wondering why Clive and I are
Oh,
talking about the
yeah,
Fed. Well, because
good.
I'll answer first, because the Fed is the biggest central bank in the world, and whatever the Fed does, all the other central banks follow suit. That's why, because it's the head money printer.
Yeah, so the Fed is a proxy for all the other central banks, all the main central banks like Europe and the UK. They're all in the same deep dodo. The central banks are either issuing too much currency or the government behind them is borrowing too much money. And all of them have gone through the same problem with the banking crisis in 2008 when they got the central bank to bail out the banks and they expanded the balance sheet. Then the COVID, once again, same story. And now we have this situation of the government having become accustomed to borrowing more than they can take in taxes, the governments, all of them. So all governments are in the same situation. They're over indebted. Central banks have got balance sheets which are way too big, and the money supply at the end of the day is expanding to such an extent that we're all going backwards if we're counting our wealth in money terms
Yeah.
in the old currency. So that's why we talk about the US because it's the proxy for the whole world.
Yeah, and in the beginning of the live stream, Clive and I were looking through that currency scoreboard of all currencies versus gold in the 21st century. And Clive said, they're all sinking the fiat currencies, and I agree. And the reason I got the dollar index chart here is that I've spoken about this many times. The dollar index was created here in 1973 in March. It started at 100, and where is it now? 104. So yes, it's fluctuated in between, but so this is a basket of the major currencies versus the dollar. So what I'm trying to say here, hedging dollar weakness with other fiat currencies is a losing game, because if you look at uh, the low here of the dollar index in March of 2008, that's when gold reached $1,000. And despite the dollar index being higher since then, gold has more than doubled. So I always try to show people this chart and say the lesson here is that not to really look too much into the dollar index, because I see a lot of people going on, oh, the dollar is really strong right now, or the dollar is really weak. But against what?
It's only strong relative to something which is already weak, but the dollar itself is weak compared with the real money of gold.
That's right. Let's see if we got any more questions. Oh, I wanted to show people as well. I don't know if you've seen this, Clive. Apparently, they're having problems now in the States with all I think they've had 10 million illegal immigrants come in. And this guy on TikTok here is a Venezuelan TikTok, what they call him a scumbag, Leonel Moreno. And I listened to him. He is telling people how they can invade people's homes and to squat in them. So I think there's a lot of trouble brewing in the U.S., especially if you happen to leave your home empty and don't take care of it. I think they have the same kind of rules here about squatting, Clive.
I know that it's always a problem if someone squats your house if you can't get them out unless you use very strong arm tactics. So this is why I don't personally like having a second property. I don't have a second property because
Yeah.
I don't think I could deal with the tenants, and if it was empty, then I couldn't think I could deal with the squatters if they came in.
Yeah, I think this is worrying, because I saw another video the other day about New York City on YouTube, and they're kind of doing the same things we are doing here. They're housing and paying for these people to stay in hotels, which is it's not going to end well, in my opinion. Uh, I wanted to talk a little bit about commodities. I've got this tweet here, Clive, from these guys I follow on X, because ever since the like late 2019, I've been quite bullish on commodities in general. Yes, in the last year and a half, they haven't really done that well, but they seem to be picking up. And I think you've seen cocoa, what it's done, right? And these guys
It's
here,
amazing.
yeah. These guys here,
Wow.
they say what's happening is much bigger than just cocoa. Commodities era is just beginning. Expect upwards pressure on PPI. Expect increasing inflation expectations, rates, yields. I kind of agree with them. What's your view?
Well, if you want to buy some chocolate, I would buy it quickly because the price is going up.
Yeah, that's right. But this is an agriculture fund. The CRB, I've looked into it as well. That's going up. Oil is going up. I noticed the price of diesel here in the UK has gone up. It
Uh,
was stuck below 160p, and now it's like 163.
just a general comment for those who want to buy these types of commodity funds. These are the funds, they do exist, which own cocoa, which own wheat, which own uranium, and so forth. Be very careful with those types of instruments because they quite often own the underlying commodity through the futures market. In other words, they're buying the 6 month future, and when it gets down to 1 or 2 months, they're selling it and rolling it into the 6 month. So these things tend to the futures trade at a contango, which means the futures price is higher than the spot price. So every time they roll it, they lose money for you. So unless the underlying price is rising very, very fast, you could have a situation where the underlying is rising gently, but your fund is going downwards. So I would be very careful and not tend to go into those sort of instruments unless you're playing a very, very short-term gain. But if you do want to get into the commodity sector, there's plenty of companies which are manufacturing the commodities or own the wheat or own the cocoa. I can't name them here on the show, but they're out there, and those who want to do some research would be able to find them. And I think that's a much better way to play the commodities than trying to own a fund which owns the underlying commodity, because you're not really owning the underlying commodity, you're just owning a future on the
Yeah.
underlying commodity.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend trading futures on commodities. I mean, you can, but just be aware that it's highly volatile. Um, I just want to show this article, and it's from me, Clive, from 2007, and so what I've been talking about, currencies sinking, and you said it today, is not even a forecast. It's just that fiat currencies always go to zero. So I've been warning this. I was still working in the city, and I used to write for fun for a blog that I had called For Sound Money, but I don't have that anymore. And this Market Oracle, they published that. So yeah, it's just something that happens. It's not that I'm smart to have a crystal ball, but like you said, no governments, politicians, they always spend and print. And the interesting here, the prices at the time, Swiss franc price of gold was what 823 francs. British pound was 342. That wasn't a sovereign, that was an ounce. and the
Mm.
yen was 73 at the time, thousand. Now it's 330.
And
So,
in dollars, I see it went from in one day from 618 to 684. So I'm sure back then a lot of people said, "My God, it's just gone up
oh,
10% in a day. I'll sell it."
no,
Uh,
actually, that wasn't in a day. It's because I wrote an article 3 months prior, I
oh,
think.
okay.
Yeah, I was just comparing it to my previous. This is a part two. There is a part one somewhere, and it's not here, but
Well, there would have been a lot of people who thought the rise in price would make it too high a price back then.
oh
But of
yeah,
course, those who sold thinking that it was the
yeah,
top made a big mistake.
yeah. That's why I think it's always, of course, sometimes you need to, uh, exchange gold or silver for another asset that you need or an emergency. But I think it's always good to keep some and maybe try to stack as much as possible as well.
By the way, Barry, I got a little bit of a feedback from somebody that the Chinese are starting to get into silver, and what they're collecting are their own silver coins, what they're called the silver pandas,
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
a
So
few.
I picked up a couple of them. They that one's a 221. They trade at quite a premium to the silver price, but that's because the demand for these things is going to go up as more and more people in China collect the silver coins and put them into their collection. So if you have one of the older dates, there won't be too many of them around and they'll all be in collections. So the Chinese will be bidding them up to try and get them.
Yeah, the other thing I saw recently is that the India is buying a lot of silver now because they're like going into this electrification, of their economies, and they need a lot of silver. So, and apparently they're taking a lot of silver out of COMEX, and COMEX is not supposed to be a physical market. And
Mhm.
yeah, so uh, I mean, there's a lot to look into COMEX, gold and silver, the open interest, the commercials, and all that. But um, I mean, I try, I don't go into the details. I don't look at it, but all I know is that it's highly leveraged and a lot of paper. And I think the Chinese they're like gaining an upper hand on the price, because I don't know if you remember last December when gold spiked above 2100, a few weeks or a month before that, the price in Shanghai was over $100 a premium, and
Wow.
we seem to be following the Shanghai price.
Yeah, I checked the Shanghai Gold Exchange price a few days ago, and the difference was about $10 higher in Shanghai. It wasn't a big difference. Call it 0.5%.
Yeah, that's because we've caught up with them. That's why, gold, I was looking because, oh, that's another question I wanted to ask you if you don't mind staying on a little longer. It's more of a moral philosophical question. Let's say Switzerland, for some reason, was the United States, and they're doing the same things that the US is doing, financing all these conflicts and everything. And the Swiss Treasury was paying 5% on their T-bills, and you are not happy with what they're doing abroad. Would you put your money in Swiss T-bills, or would you not because you don't think it's right to finance that kind of stuff?
Well, anybody who's going to repay me out of money they print with the printing press is repaying me with something which is not going to be worth what it was when I put it in. So it's a loser's game. So every country to some extent is printing. They're increasing the money supply. So I really think that unless the interest rate on the bond is significantly in excess of the rate of printing, which would be about 10% in the United States if you allow for the expansion of the government debt, then really I wouldn't really be interested in the bond at that level of that rate. I'd rather have a real tangible asset, which is probably going to keep pace with it, and on which I probably won't pay any tax until I sell it when I've got to pay the capital gains tax. Well, we don't have capital
Yeah.
gains tax here in Switzerland, and in
My
the UK you've
question
got an allowance.
more the moral part, like not the financial.
Oh,
If
oh, okay.
Switzerland was like, financing wars and like sending money to Ukraine, I personally think that's I wouldn't do it, but
I prefer not to do things which are bad for mankind. So the
that's
answer
good.
is
I'm
I
glad you said that
won't.
because there are people out there who say, oh, they're paying 5% treasuries. But the other thing is, well, I've calculated, Clive, this year, and this could change, of course, gold could correct. But did you know that on an annual basis, year to date, we're up about 22% in dollars and sterling.
On
And
gold,
yeah.
really?
Yeah, because gold started the year 2060 and now it's 2160. That's $100 up. That's 4.6% over about 80 days. So if you do the maths,
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
annualized. So and we saw that article from where even people like Larry Summers is saying that the true inflation is more like double digits. So, like you said, getting 5% is actually you're losing money.
Well, I did put out a blog a few days ago where I said that I think we're going to get this year alone, we'll probably get another 7% on the gold price. And that's a lot better than the interest that you get in the bank. And that's just a middle of the range target. It could go a lot better
Yeah.
than that.
And some people might say, "Oh, but you don't get paid the interest." Well, but if you hold it for a long time, we can always sell some of the gold. You still have the gold, but you have a lot more fiat than you would have had if you had the fiat currency. And it depends on the country. Here in the UK, we don't pay capital gains tax on gold as long as it's coin of the realm.
Yeah, when I went into my local pawn shop a few days ago to buy some silver coins that he'd rung me up and he got them, and I went in, and he did off the back of his head, he didn't know the silver price. It was one of his other shops. He had bought them and brought. He arrived at his shop, so he looked it up, and he almost fell off his chair when he saw how much it was compared with the last time I'd been in a month or so ago. I think it had gone up from something like 61 cents a gram to 71 cents a gram, which is, like you say, we're talking about silver here,
Yeah.
about 15%.
Yeah, no, it's a big difference. Uh, yeah, I think we're past our time. Clive, anything you'd like to tell the viewers? Um,
Well, thank you everybody for coming on the show. And I do look at the comments. I don't manage to reply to all of them, but I do sometimes reply. So if you've got anything to say or questions, you can ask through the comments, or better still, get in touch with me via LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to give you a reply. I'm replying to about 20 or 30 people a day at the moment, so happy to do
yeah,
that.
Clive Thompson on LinkedIn. There's just one more question here for me. I know I've said this before. I've got savings in a 2-year bond. Can't spend it until March next year. Do you think it will be still possible to do that and then put into metals? Um, Scott 49140. Are you in the UK or in the US? I guess these bonds are not like tradable. You have to wait for them. Yeah, I mean, it should be possible to take when the bond matures to take the cash and put it into metals, unless the whole system implodes and those bonds become worthless.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's expecting the system to implode tomorrow, but when these things do happen, they happen at very, very short notice due to some unforeseen incident that we didn't expect. So you never know. So yeah, you've got to just pray that nothing bad happens between now and then.
Yeah, no, that's right. Okay, and I'd like to thank all of you as well for being here. And yeah, I just wish I could answer more of your questions. It's just very difficult when there's so many people, which is a good thing. And if you're new to the channel, think about subscribing. And yeah, have a great start to the week. And Clive, thank you for coming on.
Cheers. Bye bye, Mario.
Bye, Clive.